What's up, people? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing good. And it is time to do the deep dive into the Seattle Seahawks and their salary cap. How are we going to get the money to get the players that we want? How are we going to get the money to get the players that we need? In some cases, it means that you have to move off of players who maybe you like, maybe they're still pretty good, maybe they can do some stuff, but at the end of the day, you just feel like you can use that money a little bit better. So in this video, I'm going to be going over a collection of Seahawks who financially it might make sense to move off of in this offseason. I'm not going to say we should do all of them. I'm going to have different takes on different guys. I'm going to have different views of what we should do about these players depending on who they are, what they're bringing to the table, how much money they're making. I'm not advocating for everybody on that I'm going to discuss in this video to go. These are the guys who could save you a lot of money if they go. The guys I'm going to talk about in this video, there are 7 of them. If they are released, be it post June 1st or pre-June 1st, save you at least a few $1,000,000. And there are a couple other guys on this team for sure that you could release to save like $1,000,000, but I'm not going to spend too much time on those. A lot of them are probably going to get released anyway because they're low-level roster guys. Guys like, Dwayne Eskridge, you save like $900,000 if he gets cut, but that's, whatever. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about guys who you could really save money on if you're trying to really go for it. So here are the 7 guys I want to talk about. And I'll give my take on whether or not they should be released or not. And some of these guys will be featured in the next video I make in this series. So with that in mind, let's start with Quandre Diggs. So Quandre Diggs is due $18.1 million in 2023. He is our second highest paid player, and he's still good. He's still quality. He plays an important role in this defense. And it's believable that he could have a bounce back year in 2023 because 2022 was right after that big injury. However, forgetting all that, if you release him or trade him, and I'm assuming it would have to be a release. I don't know if anybody would trade for him. And if they did, it would probably be, like a 5th round pick at best. You save $10 million against the cap, 9.9. So just a shade under $10 million saved. Now, you're still eating 8.2, and we don't like stacking up dead money around here, but maybe you decide you can use that 10 million better than having the 18 million invested in Quandre Diggs. Now, the more interesting part maybe, post June 1st. If you designate Quandre Diggs as a post June 1st release, post June 1st, you take on 4.1 million dead. And then you have to take on another 4.1 the following year. So that's a little bit more appetizing because by the time 2024 gets here, 4.1 million is going to be pretty insignificant. That's basically what we have dead for Dunlap this year. And next year, the cap is going to be even bigger. So you're talking about a very small percentage of the cap. This way, you save 14 million. And you could do a lot with a 14 million. Now, post June 1st, who's going to be left, right? You definitely have to get a little fancy with this, where you bring in some of the big players that you want. You bring in, the big guys while having Quandre on your books. And then you have a collection of smaller guys who are still going to be there post June 1st. And then you release Quandre after June 1st, and you can still go get those guys. But it is a possibility. And if you feel like Quandre Diggs is never going to get back to his top form from 2020 and 2021, that $14 million could go a long way. So that is one option. I am very on the fence here. I think I lean towards keeping Quandre because I've seen this defense without the free safety that Pete trusts, and it's even worse than the defense we had last year. We all lived through Tedrick Thompson, and until we acquire another free safety that can be relied on back there, I'm not really going to believe that we have that guy back there. Now, one possibility would be if we truly transform this Seahawks defense into the kind of defense that isn't obsessed with taking away the deep ball, isn't obsessed with having a hyper elite safety who just drops back and defends the deep stuff. Then maybe Quandre Diggs becomes less valuable because I don't see him as somebody who can become a blitzing safety. He's not a great tackler. Last year he was a terrible tackler, but even in general, not a great tackler. So it kind of depends for me on what we do with the defense. If we're going to stick with this cover 3 stuff, I want to keep Quandre. If we don't, if we maybe move away and we move towards a defense that is maybe requiring safeties to be a little more versatile and dynamic, then I think I want to move on from Quandre. Okay, that's the first one. Shelby Harris is up next. You have a pretty big cap hit on him in 2023, $12.25 million, and you only owe him $3.25 if you release him. Now, there's no difference between post-June 1st and pre-June 1st, but you're looking at basically a savings of exactly $9 million if you let Shelby Harris go. So, Shelby Harris, I thought, played well for us in 2022. I think that his struggles were largely a product of the really, really lackluster defensive line he had around him. I feel like Shelby Harris is the one guy on this defensive line who I feel like could start and play a majority of the snaps, and it might be okay. I don't know if it's ideal, but I think it could work. So I kind of want to keep Shelby, but this cap hit is actually pretty big for a player who might be settling into a more rotational part of his career. So $9 million, I'm definitely thinking hard about that. So I lean towards keeping him because we need something on the defensive line because we're not going to be able to go out and sign like 6 defensive linemen this offseason. But $9 million, that's making me think, man. That's making me think about it. This next one is going to be a slam dunk for most Seahawks fans. It is Gabe Jackson, who really was not playing well at the end of the year for the Seahawks, and his body is breaking down. He's going to be 32. And as you can see, he actually has a pretty big cap hit next year, $11.25 million. If you release him, you only owe him $4.75 million, meaning you save $6.5 million. I'm very confident that you can release Gabe Jackson, take that $6.5 million, and get a much better guard in free agency, or get a guard who's a little bit better than Gabe Jackson and still have money left over to do something else. So I am 100% in this camp. Gabe Jackson, you gave us a good year. Last year you gutted it out. I respect it, but your game's only going to get worse, man. So I am taking that $6.5 million in savings. That can get you a new guard in free agency who's a lot better than what Gabe is going to give you in 2023. I feel very confident about that. Will Dissly. Now this one, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to present it because it does theoretically save money. So, 2 sides to this. Pre-June 1st, the dead cap hit would be 6.2, and he's only due 9.25. So the cap savings for 2023 would only be about $3 million. Decent, but I don't think that's worth it. What might be worth it is a post-June 1st release where you go 3.1 dead, 3.1 dead, and for this year you save about 6.2. That might work. That might be okay. 3.1 million dead is fine, and by the time we get to 2024, you'll barely feel it, and you can do a lot with over 6 million freed up. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's worth thinking about, isn't it? It is. It feels like it's worth thinking about. I look at this and I just go, is Will Dissly worth, because at the end of the day, the real number you're looking at is how much money do I save if I let him go? Would I rather have 6,150,000, or would I rather have Will Dissly? I think I'd rather have Will Dissly, but the injury, like having another significant injury on his ledger, it's like, man. You know, we need the 3 tight ends in this offense. We can't be messing around with a guy who's not reliable. So, I don't know. This one's definitely worth thinking about, but I lean keep him. And I think we will. Okay, next up we have Quinton Jefferson. I think this is going to be another simple one for some people, even though I do want to say Quinton Jefferson was playing good at the end of the year. It's very simple with him too. If you release him, you only owe him $2 million. If you keep him, you owe him about $6 million. So you save $4 million if you let him go. And there's no difference between a release or a trade post June 1st. So either you keep him or you don't. I would not mind the idea of maybe giving Quinton Jefferson an extension that kicks the cap hit down a few $1,000,000 into 2024. Because Quinton Jefferson had an okay year, came on strong at the end, and we need depth on the defensive line. Like I said, you're not going to be able to bring in all new guys on the defensive line. You're getting rid of Collier. You're probably getting rid of Puna. I'll talk about Al Woods in a second here. You're probably getting rid of Bryan Mone. You need to keep something. You can't turn over the whole position. And Miles Adams doesn't count because he barely played. I'm not even counting Miles Adams. He needs to actually become a consistent day-to-day, week-to-week player. But Quinton Jefferson played okay to where I feel like if he's a backup defensive end behind a really good defensive end, that's pretty good. So I personally don't want to release him, but I would rather release him than keep him for $6 million. So hopefully he's willing to do some kind of extension that spreads the cap hit out a little bit. Okay, so that one I'm leaning, yeah, we got to do it unless he's willing to do an extension that spreads things out. Al Woods, I kind of feel like he's going to retire. He can barely play more than 25 snaps a game. He's got very little left in the tank. He's going to be 36 soon. And at the end of the day, you save $3.75 million if you let him go. You've only got the $1.75 million dead. He's due $5.5 million. I just can't be paying $5.5 million to a guy who I think is about to run out of gas. And even when he's on, you only really want to play him 20 snaps a game. So maybe there's something that could be worked out here, but I don't see it. So yeah, my inclination is that Al Woods should be released. Maybe you could work something out to where you extend him for a year and get his cap hit down. Maybe you give him like a year extension and a tiny bit more money, but I don't know why he would agree to that. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to turn the page on this defensive line that was so bad in 2022, man. I don't think Al Woods is a bad player. I think that Al Woods was one of our better players on the defensive line. But I don't want to sit around and wait for him to suddenly become unplayable due to age. I want to be proactive here. So yeah, I'm saving the 3.75 and I'm eating the 1.75 dead to get Al Woods off. And the final guy, and I don't know if this is going to be feasible, Bryan Mone. And the reason why it may not be feasible is because he tore his ACL, and that might change the math here. According to Spotrac, he only has $1 million dead if you release him. Now, he only has 500,000 dead post June 1st, spread, 500K, 500K, and 500K is basically nothing, but honestly, so is $1 million. Like, $1 million in salary cap space is trivial. So, either way, I'm totally willing to do it. Excuse me. Pre-June 1st, you save about $2.8 million. Post-June 1st, you save $3.3 million. But he tore his ACL. Does that mean you can't release him? Does that mean he gets his money? I don't know. I don't know exactly how this works. But whatever you got to do, you got to do. If you have to keep Mone because of the injury, then I guess you just have to keep him. I don't have a lot of optimism here because we didn't play him that much. You gave him the contract and then you didn't play him very much. It's like, do you like him or not? Like, I liked the idea of Mone because he's so big. I feel like he can be a nose tackle. But, God, you got to play him. So, I don't know. I just look at this and I go, hopefully we can release him because I just don't think he has a future here with his team. It's going to be cheap, but the injury may have made it impossible. So, time will tell on that one. But if we're just looking at it mathematically, I don't think he serves any value on this team. He's just not that good. All right, that's it. Pretty much everybody else we could release, it doesn't make sense or it wouldn't save us enough money. Like, people keep asking about, like, oh, release Jamal Adams. Costs more money to release Jamal than it does to keep him. Oh, we need to release Noah Fant. Doesn't save us a penny. So, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about things that can actually help. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to do. Who would you release? Who would you keep? Maybe find another way? What do you got?